fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Why has God called me to do this? Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched. If you've been listening to these Unchurched episodes for a while, you know that I've covered quite a few topics. Started off with just, is God real? Things that I've struggled with personally in my life, and then really in my journey to get closer to God and Jesus, and a lot of questions that just were kind of unanswered and weren't very clear in the Bible, even very clear, when attending church. And we've gone through everything from anxiety, where I talked about my issues with anxiety attacks for many, many years, and how I'm slowly overcoming all of that. And I love talking about that because it's everything I wish someone had shared with me back when I was in some pretty dark spots. Talked about love, and we talked about marriage here. Recently I shared the very special gift I gave to my wife, and we've also talked about some, different things, and we had the one about war, and I'm not talking about like old school World War I and World War II. I'm talking about the moral war that is going on, and it just seems to be getting worse. Both sides, if you will, are just constantly attacking each other. It's another reason I've turned the news off. But even in social media, I'm still getting bombarded with a lot of this stuff. And you can call it political, you can call it whatever you want. And a lot of it's just attacks. I mean, it is truly a war. And there's the racial side of things, and there's the religious side of things, and there's the political side of things. And they're all very intertwined. And I'm going to go into in a second about what God has called me to do. But I want to go back a little bit, because this is something that's just always been on mine. And it's America. It's a place that, when I was growing up, and probably when you were growing up, you were proud to be an American. And there wasn't this much just hatred. I mean, there's always been issues. Nothing's ever been perfect. But I feel like we're at this just like tipping point of things are about to implode. I'm willing to bet this is maybe what it felt like back in the days with Civil War times, where it just seems like no one can agree upon anything, and people have just taken sides, and there's kind of people in the middle now having to choose, and you have very extremes on both ends, and there's just all over the place so much hatred and so much evil. And I read a book called The Fourth Turning. I talked about it on a prior podcast, and I went back to it, and this is kind of scary what I'm about to read to you, but the average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been right at 200 years. So I'm going to repeat that. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history have been around 200 years. So if you don't know how old we are as America, we've passed that, by 30, 40 years now. And that's kind of scary. I mean, we've kind of outkicked our coverage, if we're on borrowed time, assuming that United States is a greatest civilization, which I think most people would say we are. And that, that we're average, and we're probably going to be, 200 years like most people. And here's where it gets really, really wild. So during those 200 years, these nations have always progressed through the following sequence. This has happened every single time. And in this book, they talk about this. I mean, it's like 400-page book all about this. These two professors, I think one from Harvard and one from Wharton, went back and just studied every civilization, and then spent a lot of time just on America. So during these 200 years, all of these nations progressed to the following sequence. This is going to be eerie what I'm about to read to you here. They started from bondage to spiritual faith, right? And if you've read the story about the Pilgrims, I mean, that was 100% like biblical based. They were going to a place because they were being persecuted for their religion, for being Christian, and for some of the things that they believed. I mean, the Bible was like first and foremost, like that was the most important thing. They were willing to die for God, to die for Jesus. They put faith up at the very, very, very top. And if you haven't seen Kirk Cameron's Monumental, it's a little documentary movie, must see for the whole family. Really, really amazing. When they went back and just found everything they could about what these basically first Americans believed, what drove them, why this is such a big deal. So they go from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, right? And that's when we're now taking on the big boys, right? We're now taking on England. So from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, which is what we've been experiencing really the past 40, 50, 100 years, probably, from abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence back into bondage. I'm going to read those last couple because it's tough to argue that's not kind of where we're headed. We're not in there 100% yet, but doggone it, it feels like we are headed this way very fast. So from abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy to dependence, and from dependence back into bondage. Now, earlier today, I got off 2 different calls from some of our manufacturers on the Salt Strong side of things that are making some of our baits and rods for us, and they can't get stuff in. And it's no longer because of shortages of shipping containers. Now, that's still part of it, but the number one reason, this is both America and even abroad, but these are American companies I'm talking about, is they can't get workers to show up. And these workers are not sick. They don't have COVID. They're literally just not showing up because they can get the same types of money completely free from the government, and it's a whole lot easier sitting at home inside playing Xbox than it is to have a boss and have to wake up early and to put clothes on and to show up and be part of something. Guys, I mean, that's 100% complacency and just utter dependence. When you depending on the government for your livelihood, that is not a good thing. And there is a big chunk of people who are doing that. And I feel like just as a country, we've been complacent. And I'm talking about everyone. Even as Christians, we become a little bit complacent. You know, we don't have that great courage. It talks about from spiritual faith to great courage. I feel like we're lacking in all this. We've become just very complacent as a country and as a civilization. And now, you know, it's kind of this apathy, and now it's dependence. And then the next step is back into bondage. And there are some people that are way on the, you know, the right wing side of things, like way, way, way down on that side, that would probably say we're already in bondage right now and the government's trying to control us, all this stuff. And it's kind of tough to argue it in some cases. I mean, some of it's conspiracy theories types of stuff, which I try to stay away from. But I mean, there's some just craziness going on right now. And, you know, what's really interesting, back to that Kirk Cameron video he did, or that documentary, you know, they talked about how schools were started, and really the number one focus, because these people, I mean, keep in mind, the parents and grandparents that were really the first Americans, they didn't know how long they were going to live. They didn't know what was going to happen. And really their whole goal was to protect their kids, because they knew the kids were going to be the ones who were going to be building this new civilization. They were literally basically sacrificing their lives, and many of them did, just to make sure their kids had a chance. They knew that the kids were going to be the future. And that's the same for all of us. If you're listening to me, regardless if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, the younger generation at some point is going to replace us, and they will be the leaders of the country. They will be the ones making the rules. They will be the ones deciding what type of country we are going to live in. And so these early settlers, as I mentioned, faith was at the very top. And I'm going to do a whole podcast on the Kirk Cameron thing. It's really fascinating. But you know, he said the one way to unravel everything was through kids and through the education system. And so the very first education system, the very first public schools in America, they taught, and this is on Wikipedia, by the way, which is not even a place that most people would say would be Christian. They're very on the opposite side in some cases, in terms of what is on there. And so it says the very first school system, It was teaching family, church, community, and apprenticeship. I'm going to repeat, this is what schools started teaching because this was what was important to them. They knew that if they could teach this stuff, that these young people would succeed and they would thrive and they would have an amazing life and they would have success. So once again, family, and this is for someone who had a clean slate, right? These are the very first schools in America. Clean slate. We know what's worked, what hasn't worked. They focused on family, church, community, and apprenticeship. Family, church, community, and apprenticeship. This is from Wikipedia, by the way. Okay? And I've read books on this that document the same thing. Now, looking at our own public schools, how many of them are focusing on family? Very few. How many are focusing on church? You're not even allowed to talk about church in public schools anymore. How many are talking about community? Well, some do. That's the one area that, they still do community service and talk about that. And then apprenticeship, hardly. I mean, it's sad what some of the public schools are teaching these days. And so for all this, I'm getting so frustrated. It's like, man, these young kids, they're not being taught any of this stuff that's really important. They're certainly not being taught about God and about Christ because you're not even allowed to talk about that in public schools. And now we even have their parents, the adults, not even showing up for work. Because this is not the 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds. This is the 30 and 40-year-olds for the most part, and obviously the 20-year-olds. But these are the parents of a lot of these young kids in public schools. And we've had some that we know that we were working with. It was a third party that we were doing some fulfillment with. The dude's, 38 years old, has 2 kids, and just decided one day he didn't want to show up. And it's easier to get fired because then if you get fired, you get a little severance and then you start claiming your unemployment and he makes about the same amount of money sitting at home. No drive. And what do you think his kids are doing? He's probably bragging to them, I'm making the same kind of money I was. I don't have to go into work. I mean, talk about it. And this is just one of millions of people who have this mindset and just trying to game the system. And once again, this goes back to complacency. So you're hearing me complain a lot because I've been thinking about this and it bugs me to no end because I want this to be an amazing country. I want it to be something that my kids are take pride in, that, hey, I'm an American. We work hard and we're driven and we put God first. And I feel like a lot of this stuff is being taken away. Now it's just a bunch of bickering and pointing fingers and it's your fault and we want to sue you. And I mean, half the things I hear now, even on the radio and social media, is about lawsuits and, people doing bad things to each other and riots and protests. And then just everyone who says anything that's the opposite of what you think, you're just flat out wrong and you're an idiot and I want to fight you. And I just feel like there's so much animosity. So I wear one of these, I guess I use the bracelet, but it's like that, Live Strong was one of the first ones to do it with Lance Armstrong, where you had that, little yellow bracelet on your arm. And my friend Dave Oddie, one of our insider members, had given me one. That was the first time I actually wore one. And I wore it for, a couple of years and it finally snapped. So I went and got another one, and it was something, I think it was God first. And so I went and got another one. That thing snapped. So I ended up getting a bunch of them. I just went to Amazon and ordered a bunch of them. And I pull the thing out. And so imagine a Ziploc bag, but it wasn't clear. And it just had a bunch of these bands and you can't really see what's on it. So I just pick one up and guess what it said? It said pray. And I kind of wanted something different, I'll be honest with you. I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. So I put it off to the side and I pick again and it's pray. And I was like, is this all that's in here? No, there's only 2 of them. And there's this entire batch and I get the first 2. And so I was like, maybe God's just telling me to do this. So I put this bracelet on. It says pray, and it's from Thessalonians 5:17, and it's pray without ceasing. Big and bold, just pray without ceasing. And so we're having some issues with our air conditioner, and I'm wearing this bracelet and with my watch. They're both black. And the guy who's coming to give us a quote with the AC unit, he's staring at my wrist, and you can tell when someone's staring either in your teeth or your ear or something. And he looked down 2 different times, and I was like, "What's up?" He's like, "Is that what it says? Was that what I think it says?" And I thought he was talking about my watch, and because no one's ever mentioned the black band before. It's small and it's tough to really read it. And he's like, pray without ceasing. And he shows me his wrist. He's got the same one. I got like goosebumps. I was like, whoa, he literally had the same bracelet. And so I was just like, all right, God, you're trying to tell me something here. And it's to pray. And I realized that I haven't been praying the way I should. I've been very diligent about writing about my wife. I do a little journal too, where I just kind of talk to God, but I have not done the best job of praying. And every time I get a little bit fired up about a lot of this stuff, and I'm going to share another story. I'm trying to just verify all the details, but it will get you fired up to the point you might be ripping your kids out of school for some of the things that are being taught right now in our public school system that go completely against everything I'm willing to bet you stand for. And a lot of this stuff is just kind of being done underneath our noses, and that's just one piece of it. But anytime I get just fired up about all this stuff, and I just kind of like disappointed and anger and like a mix of emotions, I just go back to this pray. And so I'm willing to bet if you made it this far that you're probably like me, that maybe you're a little disappointed where our country's heading. Maybe you're worried for your kids, and maybe it's your grandkids. Maybe you're just worried that, that God's getting kicked out of everything, and that, we're going down the path of some other countries. Like I said, we've kind of outkicked our coverage in terms of averages of civilizations that were great. And maybe you're like me, where you want to do something about it and you don't really know what to do. And quite honestly, I don't know what to do besides using this platform to share love and just to spread good things. I don't necessarily know what to do. I certainly don't want to go run for president or even senator right now. Maybe in the future, something like that could happen. But then again, I feel like I could do just as much good if we just keep building this platform and reaching millions and millions of people without having to do all the dirtiness that happens in the politics side of things, and have half the people just automatically hate you, even if you're trying to do a good job. So anyhow, I just keep going back to pray, and I would encourage you to do that too. Just to pray without ceasing, to pray to God. I have a feeling that with all of this, just because every single time in history that something kind of bad and there's been tension, usually something great happens from it. Same with our lives, right? We've talked about it. Why do bad things happen to good people? Every single time that something bad has happened to me, or at least, bad is very debatable, right? Bad to one person might not be bad to another, but every time something in my opinion was bad to me, like cancer and anxiety attacks, it's always turned out for something amazing, that it was there for a reason, and I became a better person for it. And I'm willing to bet that the same things happen with our country. I do believe there's some things that need to be fixed in this country, and sometimes it got to get a little dirty, if you will, to happen. And in the meantime, I'm going to be praying, and I'm going to be praying, not just for our leaders and just for the people, but just almost a revival, right? I mean, if we had a revival of the church, the stuff that got us to where we are, the stuff that made this country great in the beginning, it was never made great on perfection or just, everyone had to be, a Christian and go to church 7 days a week. No, it was built on some trust, and it was built on, once again, on family, church, in community. I mean, these are things that are important that are being completely left out of the dialogue, right? With all of the things going on out there and all of these attacks on different people and all of the people who are looting and doing all these horrible things right now, how come it's never talked about? That maybe we have an issue with the foundation, the family, and are these people even going to church? Do they even know what church is? Do they have a relationship with God and Jesus? And so I'm just praying every single day that they do, that these people somehow, and many of us, we know that maybe we're in a bad place or going down maybe a wrong path when God kind of hit us on the side of the head and opened our eyes to Him, that just happens, and there's a revival of Jesus and revival of love, and that this country can get back on the right path and not go down this path of bondage. And this is what no one wants, right? I mean, even the craziest far left person in the entire world no one wants to be in just pure bondage. They all think that, whatever path they're going is going to be better. But I mean, it's really easy to look back on history and say, all right, maybe we should take a little breather, a little time out, if you will, and go back to see what got us to be successful in the first place. And right now, we're not practicing any of it, by the way. We're trying to define our own new path without God, with literally letting go of everything that has made us successful and made us more loving and made us more dependable and trustworthy. And we're trying to do the opposite. So I am going to continue to pray without ceasing. And that what I believe is what God has called me to do. And so the whole title, why has God called me to do this? I believe he's called me to pray for some answers. And also that he's going to start speaking through me with some, hopefully some hard-hitting stuff. I guess I will leave it at that. I feel like I'm called to speak on some things, but I'm just not ready yet. And so I'm going to continue to pray. Pray for me, please, that I get to use this platform for good and that I don't ever let it get, political or going down the path where I'm agitating people and stirring stuff up, because I that's not good. That doesn't help anyone. Even if we could say, oh, we're right and the other, the other group is wrong or whatever. I'm not even talking about political sides. I'm just talking about just people that disagree with you. Why not find some kind of common ground? And to me, the one thing that's been common is God, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of what you believe politically, and is this good, this bad? I mean, God, Jesus, it's love. It's pretty clear. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm called to do some things, and I'd love for you just to pray for me on that. That I once again will continue to use this platform for good, and that I will not go down the path of ever being angry, which I felt like I've wanted to get on this microphone a few times and just do it. And every time I've gone back to this is pray without ceasing. Just continue to pray and pray for patience and clarity and vision and wisdom, and that God will speak through me, and that it will not be just something that I want to blurt out because I'm angry about something I saw, or just frustrated with the way things are going. So, guys, I appreciate you. Let's pray for a massive revival of love in this country. We need it. I know I'm craving for it. I'm craving to start seeing good stuff, and no more of the bad stuff, and especially just getting rid of all the hatred and the racism, all this stuff that's out there. Oh, it's so sad. So pray for a revival of love. Pray that the Lord finds some way here soon to speak through me, and that I have patience, that I know it's going to be on his time and not mine, and that it'll just be very clear which path I'm supposed to take with this platform in particular, with this Unchurched. So I appreciate you guys. Love you. And I will talk to you on the next episode. I'd love to hear your feedback. You got my email, hopefully, joe@saltstrong.com. They all come to me. It's my private email. No one else reads them. I do try to get back with every single one. Sometimes it takes me a while. But Joe, Joe, @saltstrong.com. Talk to you soon.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.